When I was 7 years old, I cut my hair short for the summer. It was hot, I'd gotten fed up with having long hair, and my parents had always been cool about things like that. However, when I returned to school that September, excited about my new style, I was promptly told in very strong words that I am no longer a girl. That is the first instance of gender policing I remember experiencing, though I doubt that it was the first overall, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. Throughout my teenage years, I was vividly aware of the differences between me and my peers, because I was constantly reminded of them. I've always been tall, muscular, and hairy, all things that were celebrated or at least accepted in men, but not women. Gender is an odd concept, particularly to those of us who do not conform enough to be considered successful at it. These days, many of the people I meet see me as a cisgender woman, so somebody who has been identified as a woman since birth. There are also those who see me as a transgender woman, so somebody who was assigned male at birth and later identified as a woman. To many people, those are the only two options they are aware of. Gender has recently become more accepted as something fluid and not solely determined by physical characteristics. Cisgender and transgender are both terms that describe the relationship between your gender and your sex, so the reproductive characteristics of your body. Sex is still seen as two rigid categories that you can assign to somebody based on the appearance of their genitalia. But it's not quite that simple. If it was, I wouldn't be standing here today. I am neither a cisgender nor a transgender woman. In fact, I'm only a woman in the same way a banana is a berry. Sure, it is a berry, according to some parameters, but I don't think we're all going to agree to that, right? Now, what if I told you that I am intersex? Intersex people have reproductive characteristics such as hormones, chromosomes, primary and secondary sex characteristics that don't fit into either bracket male or female. There are people with ovaries who grow beards, people with XY chromosomes who have vaginas and breasts, people whose hormones make their puberty go very different than expected, and many more. Now, hearing that, your perception of me might be changing. Maybe you're scanning me, trying to figure out what exactly is different. Maybe you're noticing details you haven't noticed before. Or maybe your eyes went directly to my crotch, trying to see what's down there. Now, I'm not judging you for any of that. It's not really your fault. Our brains are highly programmed to recognize patterns and interpret information. But it's also not a response that, for example, a small child would have, because we're trained to think this way every single day from the day we are capable of understanding these distinctions. Most of the time, we're not really aware of it, which is one of the ways we classify normal and abnormal. The abnormal sticks out to us like a sore thumb. Whether it be clothes, hair color and length, height, body weight, we don't notice it until it deviates from our expectations. Sex and gender are some of the categories that make people the most curious. And even when we're not met with hostility, our bodies are still often seen as some sort of riddle to figure out. As soon as somebody is in some way gender nonconforming, the guessing starts. What are they really? What's under those clothes? But we don't do this if nothing sets off our alarm bells. In that case, we assume that person is congruent with what we consider normal. In other words, the reason we don't stare at people's crotches all day to figure out what's down there isn't because it's irrelevant to us. It's because we think we already know. And that is really weird. So, we analyze, we categorize, we classify. That in itself isn't something you need to feel guilty about. But for people like me who do stick out, it can be extremely hard to deal with. Making friends, finding a job, finding housing, getting adequate healthcare are all made harder if you break any of the rules we have. It's the reason trans kids are denied puberty blockers to give them time to make a decision about what they want to do with their bodies. It's the reason intersex children are forced into invasive and irreversible aesthetic surgeries and made to take hormones their entire lives. The same hormones they deny trans people who don't fit the mold. It's the reason effeminate men are shamed and judged, while older women with some facial hair or less dainty features are essentially erased from media representation entirely. It's the reason fat people are supposed to perform gender to the highest degree. And yes, I'm saying fat. We're reclaiming it as something non-judgmental. But think about it. When have you last seen a fat person described as attractive who wasn't either wearing a suit and a full beard, or a fancy dress and a whole lot of makeup? We're meant to accept what we deem normal as the standard and the truth, but at the same time, work really hard to eliminate everything about us that deviates from it. It's a self-perpetuating system that doesn't really care about body autonomy, only about what is congruent with what we already believe. And it's really easy to say that everything fits the rules you created if you simply alter or exile everything and everyone that doesn't. Honestly, my puberty was tiring. I was told that I'm only a lesbian because I'm too ugly and mannish to get a guy by somebody I thought was my friend. I cannot adequately describe to you how it felt to have my breasts grabbed by a stranger when I was 15, because he wanted to know if they were real. No amount of starving myself was enough to escape the judgment of my peers. I was a failed girl, but I didn't want to be a man. So where did that leave me? When I found out I was intersex, a huge weight fell off my chest. I didn't have to conform anymore. I was allowed to deviate. Identifying as non-binary, so neither fully man nor woman, only amplified that. Suddenly, I could be as non-conforming as I wanted to be and celebrate all the parts of me that were used to put me down before. I get to be weird and different and stop self-policing my body entirely. I get to stand here before you, happy and proud. Of course, I'm still harassed and discriminated against. Strangers still ask about my genitalia or the very tactful, "What are you?" But it doesn't hurt anymore because I'm not ashamed. These days, I'm able to stand up for myself and not internalize the negativity. I have a support system and safe spaces where I don't have to fear violence. But this feeling shouldn't be reserved for people who are intersex or non-binary or queer. Every single person should get to feel the same way I did when I found out I didn't have to play this game anymore. Changing the entire world to be a place where all bodies can be themselves and we can truly thrive will not happen overnight. And there is no easier or quicker path than to keep advocating and making ourselves heard. And this includes decisions about how you want your gender to be defined and how your body is related to that. It includes letting go of assumptions and letting people be people without the constant need to codify an entire person into a few words and concepts that really don't describe most of us perfectly. It includes discarding the status quo as something positive or inevitable. So many of us don't even know the thrill of discovering a little piece of ourselves that has been so effectively squashed, we barely feel the itch. Radical body acceptance starts when you break down all the ways in which your body has been pathologized and categorized, in which you have been shamed and judged and made to feel like you need to work to make your body fit a standard that we have entirely made up. But unlearning the messaging that we have internalized our entire lives is not so easy. So today, I want to share my own method with you. I do the opposite, and I embrace the discomfort. I'll use an example from my own life because it probably applies to a lot of people. Shaving. I used to shave my legs, armpits, face, the most common parts to shave. But honestly, I didn't really like doing it very much. So one day, in the middle of summer and swimming pool season, I stopped. I didn't shave. I let all my body hair grow freely. At first, I hated it. I was so uncomfortable. Everybody must be staring at me, judging me for being gross and unkempt. I felt gross and unkempt. But I didn't give in. I stuck it out, and after about 2 weeks, it got easier. I felt lighter. After 3 weeks, I didn't care anymore. I couldn't imagine going back. The formula is the following. Find the itch, whatever you've been doing to fit expectations, to hide or change part of your body, and then do the opposite and sit with it. For something you want to and can do safely, I recommend giving it about 3 weeks. But I trust that you will know once you get past the initial discomfort. I highly encourage all of you to do this. It is intensely freeing, and even if you decide, actually you were happy with the way you did things before, great. Your confidence and agency matter so much and have the power to make a real difference. If you will join me, try to think of one or more things that make you deviate from the norm. Any characteristic that makes you less feminine or masculine in other people's or in your own minds. Maybe you haven't left the house without makeup for years. Do you wear clothing that shows your legs if you haven't shaved? Are you scared to raise your arms because your armpits aren't smooth, light, and hairless? Do you wear clothing that hides parts of your body? Are you at the gym or working out just to reach a certain shape? Do you avoid certain colors? Anything like that. I'll give you a moment, and if you feel safe to do so, you can try to think of an example from your own life. Please raise your hand if you can think of at least one example. Keep them up. Keep them up. Look around you. What if you stopped hiding? What if you stopped being ashamed or feeling like you need to keep parts of you locked away? What if you realized that you are already a man or a woman, or neither, or both? That your body is fine the way it is, and that nobody can take that away from you? If you remember one thing from this talk, let it be that there is no normal or correct body, because we are all beautifully chaotic and different. And we shouldn't judge each other based on norms that do not reflect so many of us, and neither should we judge ourselves. I challenge you to stop assuming that you already know all the ways to be a man or a woman or a person. Consciously remind yourself that you have agency over your perception of yourself and others, over the way you inhabit your own body. Sit down with yourself and really ask, what am I being pushed to do? Take a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, and push back. Stop shaving. Start shaving. Get rid of shapewear. Banish your scale from your home. Throw out your makeup collection. Only eat foods that make you really happy. Wear those high heels or those sneakers. Stop policing your movements and your appearance. Start looking at yourself kindly. Display your bumps and your freckles and your scars. Whatever it is, it's worth the process. I can tell you from experience that it feels so good. Consciously breaking your programming and rebuilding your relationship with your environment and your peers is the key to unlearning harmful habits and to accepting not only yourself, but those around you. We are not in this world to suffer and conform, or to superimpose suffering and conformity on others. Strict norms and standards do not protect you. They cage you. I'm not expecting anybody to leave this room and be a changed person, but I want you to know that this is a journey that anybody can go on, that has the potential to make you so much happier, to make the world we live in a more vibrant and accepting place, one where we don't care so much what's in people's pants. And that is a goal worth striving for. Thank you.